Hello beautiful people. A while back I made a video where I repaired an antique universal joint, and I briefly showed some brass jaw caps that I used to protect the finish on a machined part. I really thought they deserved their own video because this is a very quick and simple project that saves you the headache of having to clean up all those marks the chuck jaws leave behind. So pick up your tin snips, hit that subscribe button, and let's get cracking. I started with a piece of paper that I could fold around the jaws to make a template. Once the paper's where you want it, trace the jaws with a marker. This is so you can make a couple of tabs that will wrap around the jaws to keep the caps in place. Now you just need to cut the paper template out. I'm using a square to guide a razor blade just to keep the lines straight, but scissors would definitely do the job. Once you've finished your arts and crafts project, give it a thorough test fit on the jaw and trim as necessary. Alternatively, you could measure the jaws and lay it out that way, but honestly, the paper template method is way simpler, and for this, it's more than good enough. I'm using brass shim stock that's 20 thousandths or 0.54 millimeters thick. You can use other thicknesses of course, but this is what I have on hand. Just make sure that all the caps are made from the same thickness of material to avoid concentricity issues. Don't go too thick either because it'll be harder to form around the jaws. I put painter's tape on the shim stock, and then I'm going to use super glue to attach the paper template to the tape. This will be to make a brass template for future use. Now I just need to cut out the template, and when I'm done, I can peel off the painter's tape and leave behind a nice, residue-free brass template for my jaw caps. Make sure to label the template so when you throw it in a drawer and forget about it, you'll be able to identify what it is when you stumble upon it in 10 years or so. I actually put it in the drawer where I keep all of my lathe soft jaws. That makes sense to me now, but only time will tell what future steward thinks of my decision. The next step is to scribe around the template to mark out the blanks for our actual jaw caps. I just scribed onto the raw brass, but you could use a layout fluid to make it easier to see. This brass had a pretty healthy patina, so the scribe lines were much easier to see in person than they appear on camera. It's time to snip out all of the blanks. I tried to stay right on my lines and keep them as straight as I could. That way they're easier to fit to the jaws. I also kept all of the rectangular pieces I cut out of the corners. It's always handy to have little brass shims like that. I use them a lot between step clamps and parts on the mill to keep them from denting parts, especially if I'm making a shaft. Brass shim stock is usually sold in a half-hard state, so this stuff doesn't want to bend easily right now. That means we have to anneal the blanks. To do that, just heat it up to a reddish-orange color in a dim room and let it cool down on its own. The entire part doesn't need to be hot all at once. You can work your way along it, but definitely keep the torch moving. Even with a propane torch like this one, it's pretty easy to melt brass if you stay in one place too long. It's finally time to form the caps around the chuck jaws. This is very easy now that the blanks are annealed. I start with it centered on the jaw and then bend it around until the tabs wrap around the top. The tabs keep the caps from falling off while you're positioning your part, so don't leave those off. Lather, rinse, and repeat with the other jaws. Lastly, close the jaws onto your stock. This will cause the caps to crush a little at the contact point and they'll open up a bit. Don't worry, it's totally normal. Once the jaws are tight on the stock, simply adjust the bends until the caps wrap around the jaws again. These jaw caps are hands down some of the most useful things you can make to improve your results on the lathe, and they really didn't take that long to make, maybe 30 minutes tops. That time will be repaid many times over when you don't have to polish out those pesky jaw marks, so be sure to put these things in a baggie and keep them someplace you'll be able to find them. On the left side of your screen, I have a link to my most recent video, and on the right is a video YouTube thinks you'll like. If you have a favorite mod, hack, or accessory for the lathe, let me know what it is down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out my Patreon page if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.